Welcome to another video on my YouTube channel. My name is Lakshman Sibal. I'm a junior in high school, and in today's video, we're going to be discussing the polite form in German plus some gender rules. Just a bit about my channel. It's German with Lakshman. That's the name of the YouTube channel. On my channel, I'm really uploading. I have two real series really. A learning German series, and my podcast. Now, my podcast is not only available on my YouTube channel, it's also available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, every single basic platform that you could listen to podcasts. It's pretty much on. I'm using the Anchor app, and it's really, really good. I highly recommend it if you're interested in making a podcast. But with my YouTube channel, I also upload my podcast here. But my other main focus on my YouTube channel is my learning German series, and right now I'm still laying the foundation, in my opinion, for you guys because I think the most important thing when you're learning a language, and I repeat this a lot in many of my videos because just to make sure that if someone who didn't see the last video is watching this, that they get this because I think it's the most important thing when you're learning a language, at least from my experience, is that you have a very, very strong foundation with vocabulary. So that when you move on to grammar, and by the way, basic grammar and vocabulary makes up your strong foundation. And then the more complicated stuff, what people struggle with more is the advanced grammar. And they struggle with the advanced grammar not just because they can't really understand the advanced grammar, but because now that they don't have such a strong foundation, they're worrying about their vocabulary plus their basic grammar that they haven't reviewed enough and they're not strong enough on. And with that, all that, plus the advanced grammar, it's impossible. So the way I recommend you do it is, and that's why I'm putting such a strong focus on like basic vocabulary early on in my course, is being very strong with your vocabulary, being very strong with your basic grammar, so that when we move on, and we will move on at some point, very soon, by the way, not very soon, but soon, to more advanced grammar topics, then you'll be in a good position to understand what's going on because you won't have three things coming at you that you're not really sure of. It'll be just one thing, and that's more manageable. That's just how I see it. But yeah, let's just get straight into it. So the polite form plus gender rules. So the polite form in German, there are two main ways you can address people in German: du and sie. Um, Both of these ways mean you. So if you translated it, do would mean you and see would mean you. However, there's a very big difference. Do is informal and see is the formal. By the way, if you were writing, you wouldn't capitalize do. It's capitalized here. Probably my bad. But do wouldn't be capitalized. See would be capitalized, by the way. So if you're writing in the middle of the sentence, even though C is not a noun, because remember, nouns are capitalized in German, but C would still be capitalized. And that's because there's another C that's lowercase that's different. That has a very different meaning. So if they were both lowercase, it'd be very confusing. You would use do when you're talking to children, your family, and your friends. Sometimes when you're talking to your family, by the way, you should use see. It's probably fine also if you use do. And when mean see, that's when you're talking to like your parents about something. Maybe you want to use see, but you can use do when you're talking to children, family, friends. You see when you're talking to your teachers, neighbors, or people that you don't really know that well. And the biggest thing that will throw you off is that the conjugation of the verbs is very different for do and see. So what does this mean? If I was asking a question, let's say, "Habst du eine Bleistift?" Right? Do you have a pencil? "Habst du?" Right? You become very used to saying "habst du" or st, a verb plus st and do, right? When you're asking someone something, and that's if I'm talking to a friend. But if you're saying that to an adult, you would say "Haben Sie eine Bleistift?" Right? Haben Sie is very difficult. I mean, not difficult. It's very different than "habst du." The st do en, right? The verb conjugation is different. So that throws a lot of people off because sometimes they'll say hab see. That's wrong. You have to conjugate the verb differently when you're talking in the formal. So that's the most difficult part about this concept. It's not that difficult, but you need to practice with it. And as you practice with it, you'll be fine. Now on to gender roles, which is the second part of this video. So all nouns have gender. And there are exceptions. So that, like I said, in the most recent video, the one before this one, I spoke about plural rules, right? For okay, if a noun ends in this, add this for the plural. If a noun ends in this, add this for the plural. But the thing that you have to remember is that you can't apply rules and for the plural to everything. That same thing applies here with the gender rules. Not all nouns follow these rules. There are many, many exceptions. However, enough follow these rules so that these rules actually exist and that you can use them. You should know them and you should keep them in the back of your head. However, do not like freak out if you see exceptions because it's a big part of German. And that this is probably the trickiest part of German, these exceptions to the rules. But yeah, so all nouns have gender. If a noun ends in E, the definite article will always, well, nearly always be D. This one's probably the most sure thing. However, look here, massive exception is with der Junge, the boy, right? That definite article is der, right? It's a masculine word, even though it ends in E. Other than that, there are not many exceptions to the first rule, but still, that's a massive exception because it's a really, really commonly used word. If it ends in er, definite article is normally der. If it ends in chen, definite article is das. For example, das Mädchen, the girl, right? That's neuter, even though you'd think, okay, the girl should be a feminine word. Nope, it's neuter. And it ends in chen. But yeah, other than that, that's really it for the video. Focus on these. You should take notes on both of these slides. Make sure you know it, that your notes are useful. You practice, you study it, you put in the effort. That's really going to determine whether you actually make progress, whether you understand what's going on. Um, but the gender role stuff, the memorization is what's going to make it tricky. You can use the rules, but know in the back of your head that there's a lot of exceptions. For the polite form, this is much more straightforward, and that there's a constant rule that you can always follow. And yeah, just remember that the conjugation of the verbs is different, and that's going to get some taking. That's going to take some getting to used to, getting used to. But you'll be fine. But yeah, that really wraps up the video, the polite form and gender rules. If the video was productive for you, I'd appreciate it if you dropped a like on the video because then by dropping a like and subscribing to the channel, it helps the YouTube algorithm promote my content so that more people see it. And yeah, check out the podcast if you're interested in the sorts of topics I spoke about earlier about the podcast. Um, but yeah, thank you and goodbye.